He's looking, they will never believe this. That's why I can't say the name. He's looking down. I pick his chin up.
This might be Joe's worst lie yet. It's honestly wild to hear him try to convince people that he ever pressed Jimmy Henchman. If this is the same person he's hinting at while throwing around the rat talk, then let's be clear, there's paperwork on his guy Jose, known as Cuban Kirby, and yes, that paperwork exists too. We're going to get into all of that because this isn't just talk. This is a situation where the story starts falling apart fast. As this clip keeps making the rounds, Joe looks like he's caught in a straight-up cap, and even Jadakiss seems stunned, like, wow, Jim, you really went there with this one. Before we break it all down, hit the like button and tap the hype button because this conversation is about to get uncomfortable in a real way. This isn't surface level talk, this is history, reputations, and street narratives colliding. Fat Joe is carefully trying to suggest he scared one of NYC's biggest boogeymen, one of the most feared names tied to New York history, Jimmy Henchman. Some people think he's talking about Alpo, but that doesn't line up. Alpo wasn't out here pressing rappers like that. He was already locked up during the golden era. The person who was moving like that was Jimmy Henchman, and the fact Joe won't say his name out loud tells you everything you need to know. Fat Joe has always been known for capping, and he's even admitted himself that he stretches the truth. We're going to get into all of that, but first, we need to look at this footage where Joe is fronting like he's the biggest gangster New York City has ever seen. Before we break it down, hit the like button and tap the hype button because this part matters.
Introduce me, so I gotta go out. When they do that, somebody appears. It gives me their hand. I shake people's hand in the airport all day, everybody. I'm Fat Joe, I'm celebrity. What's up? So I say, what's up? So he says, yo, you know who I am? They already introduced me. The music's going. Lean Back is on. It was only like 2 songs. I said, nah. He said, yo, I'm such and such. When I looked at him, I said, holy shit. Now this guy's beyond the killer. He was extorting every rapper on earth. He was extorting the streets. He was doing whatever. He was a monster out here. A legend of all legends. Right. I couldn't wait to get off.
When you really listen to what he's saying, it's obvious who he's hinting at. Everybody already knows the Jimmy Henchman situation, especially the history tied to Tupac and everything surrounding that era. If you know, you know. Jimmy Henchman was around heavy, and he wasn't just some background figure. He was a label owner with real influence. There's no mystery here. This can only be about Jimmy Henchman. Now Joe is trying to suggest he somehow outganged a top figure while also calling that same person a rat. And that's where the story completely falls apart. There's paperwork tied to Joe himself, and we're going to get to that. This ends up sounding like the boldest lie he's ever told, and it's nasty. Cuban Kirby has been doing way too much, but let's keep it moving and get back to the footage.
That stage, I ran back to this dude. I couldn't believe he was standing there. I said, now look at me, you rat mother bastard, piece of shit, sucker bitch, your mother shit on her face, nigga. You ever in your life. Cuz it just happened. I don't know what the dynamic is. Mano bumped into Troy Ave. Troy Ave had a baby in his hand in front of 10,000 people. I hear they had problems. But Mano, said, what's up? I wouldn't have done that, right?
Mino is more solid than you, facts. Don't even try to play that card. You wouldn't have moved the way Mino moved, so stop speaking on his name like that. Mino was really known for standing on business, and he earned real respect, not just in New York, but on the West Coast too. That reputation didn't come from talking, it came from actions, and everybody knows that. Now yeah, Mino is older now. He's grown, matured, lived life, and moved past a lot of that energy. That's called growth. But what doesn't sit right is Joe even bringing up Mano's situation, because what does that have to do with him? You're not Mano, and you haven't done the things Mano is known for. Let's keep it honest, instead of mixing names to boost a story. And then you're piling that on top of this whole made-up narrative about pressing Jimmy Henchman of all people. This is the same Jimmy Henchman who had serious issues with 50's camp and is currently incarcerated for orchestrating a fatal incident involving someone connected to G-Unit. He's been locked up since around 2015 or 2016, somewhere in that range. So hearing Joe talk about running into him and pressing him just sounds crazy. Yeah, all right, champ, let's keep it moving and continue. Jadakiss wants no parts of this at all. Kiss isn't jumping in to validate this story, and he's definitely not about to co-sign any of that cap. We've said it before, Joe lies so badly that it's past regular capping at this point. This isn't even a cap anymore. This is something else entirely, like a fitted with no brim, just sitting there looking wild. At this stage, the story has gone from cap to straight fantasy.
But he was running down on anybody who's the realist in New York, and they, nah, but my bad, son. I would have never talked about you. Yeah. Oh, this. I'll tell you, I'll give you a clue. My man Wally World throw them hood plays. The man went to the middle of the hood play. He's a rat of all rats. And told all the OGs we ever seen in Fed magazine and all of them. He was like, yo, who got a problem? Who won it? Everybody was like, mum's the word. No, but what I'm saying to you is,
Jesus Christ!
Not only did I scream on this killer, you're a part of this story, you don't even know it. Oh. But listen, no, listen. You a part of it.
How the fuck am I a part of this?
Because you was...
No brim, no shape, no structure. Just throwing anything out there and hoping it sticks. That's where this is headed. These kinds of lies don't even sound believable anymore, and that's the real issue here. You gotta change the wording, because this type of storytelling is nasty. Let's be real about what's happening instead of forcing it. Then it turns into this exaggerated moment where Joe is acting like he picked up Jimmy Henchman and embarrassed him. Yeah, alright. Nobody is buying that. The math isn't mathing and the room isn't believing it. Remember what you used to say happened to people who told stories like this. Before we go any further, hit the like button and tap the hype button if you haven't already, and let's actually take a look at what's being said. Apparently it never stopped. He just kept going, kept stacking the story higher and higher, claiming he ran someone out, claiming all types of wild moves. But here's the problem. Nobody has ever backed this up.
Complaining about the nigga in the back of my store. All of y'all kept telling me, yo, this dude's out here moving like this, that. This nigga's crazy, this. I'm just saying, you don't even know who I'm talking about.
Let me talk to the people. Whoever he's talking about, I was never complaining about anybody for years.
What I'm saying
he's saying.
No, what I'm saying is this guy was shaking everybody down.
I know.
Right? So he was shaking everybody down. So
rats is
I'm talking about from the biggest to the this. Yeah. So I go and I see Davies tell me something. But when I'm walking away, no. So I turn back around and I go right back up to this guy again. Piece of shit, right? He's looking, they will never believe this. That's why I can't say the name. He's looking down. I picked his chin up.
Not one witness, not one story, not one piece of testimony saying any of that actually happened. We've never heard it before, and that alone should tell you something is off. Now, since we're already talking about capping and about supposedly running down on major names, let's shift the spotlight for a second and talk about your situation. Yeah, champ, let's talk about that part.
Too, when I was in junior high school around that time, I used to lie a lot. You know what I'm saying? And I used to get beat up for that. So I would tell somebody in the school, yo, I used to be with, I was with that girl, such and such. And it was a lie.
Right.
You know what I mean? So her brother heard, and they pen deep. And it was like, let's beat up Joey Day. So even, one day I remember I had to look in the mirror and tell myself, like, yo, I gotta stop lying. Like, yo, Joe, you gotta stop lying. You get beat up because you be telling these lies. Like you gotta stop.
Right.
And so I learned to stop. I stopped completely. Like, if you catch me in the lie,
it's about growth and maturity. And
what you're looking at right here is paperwork tied to Joe. Big salute to the person who sent this over. A solid individual that a lot of people know. This isn't gossip, this is documentation, and this is where things get uncomfortable. This paperwork points straight to Jose, also known as Cuban Kirby, and it shows cooperation. That's the part nobody wants to address. This right here is nasty work because it contradicts everything that's being said out loud. At this point, the receipts are speaking for themselves. The text might be small, but the message is loud, so let's do everyone a favor and actually read what's there instead of dodging it. Watch this part closely. This is the first section of the paperwork, and it lays things out very clearly. It lists locations like Trinity Avenue and Union Avenue, and it states that Joe admitted to selling product in those areas, which is how the nickname Joey Crack allegedly came about. This is an opinion. This is what's written in black and white, and that's why this matters. The document goes on to say that Mr. Carter provided names and details about other individuals, including someone known as Truth from Cambridge Road, tied to a crew called 25 to Life. As you can see, this is direct cooperation, explaining who was involved and who was responsible for serious street activity. This isn't vague, it's very specific, and that's what makes it uncomfortable. It also describes a separate incident where several individuals, including Fat Chino, Arnold Rodriguez, and Jose, all connected to the Bryant boys, went to the forest projects looking for someone to carry out harm against another individual from Hunts Point. Joe claimed he didn't know that person personally, but knew of him from back in the 80s when graffiti crews were active and different crews were clashing. All of this is documented, and that's why we're slowing down and actually reading it. Alright, this is the second half of the paperwork, and it's already looking nasty. If you haven't hit the like button or the hype button yet, now's the time, because this is part 2, and it gets very specific. This isn't opinion, this is straight from documented statements, and that's why it matters. According to the paperwork, Mr. Carter stated that Reyes was the person who was killed. He goes on to name individuals like Pistol Pete and Charlie Rock, explaining that he knew Reyes from prison and that Reyes was associated with a group described as rat hunters within the New York prison system. He also mentions another individual named Afro, who allegedly helped place Pete in Hunts Point after he came home. The document claims that both Reyes and Afro were involved in contract situations. It continues by saying that Fat Chino was looking for a shooter and that Reyes carried it out. Then it states that Julio, also known as Julio Rodriguez, who was Reyes' brother-in-law, allegedly paid another individual. The name is blurry, but appears to be someone called Huckle, to carry out the killing of Reyes. Reyes was reportedly shot inside a building in Hunts Point. So when you step back and look at this, the paperwork shows Joe describing who wanted people harmed, who was involved, and who carried it out. While on the Joe and Jada podcast, he's loudly claiming he pressed a well-known figure tied to extortion stories in New York. That contrast is hard to ignore. He's out here saying he pressed Jimmy Henchman and embarrassed him, talking like he's some untouchable figure. Then he throws in comments about Mano and Troy Ave, acting like he would have handled things differently, like he's on some super gangster level. But the problem is, the paperwork completely contradicts that image. Right here, it shows him giving names and details, telling on people left and right, while still trying to wear a tough persona on the Joe and Jada podcast. That contrast is wild. What makes it even crazier is that this isn't just speculation. One of the people directly connected to this paperwork, someone who's been behind the walls for a long time, has already spoken on it. This is the same individual who originally presented the paperwork, so this isn't random commentary. Before we jump into that, hit the like button and tap the hype button, because the next part adds a whole new layer to this situation. There's a saying that whatever's hidden in the dark always comes to the light, and that's exactly what's happening here. The voice you're about to hear is Reyes, who is currently incarcerated and serving a serious life sentence. On the screen, you can see him on the left in prison attire, speaking directly about the paperwork and what it really means. Below him, next to that old photo of Fat Joe, is the exact same paperwork I just read. That's Reyes holding it down from inside, and there's no sugarcoating it. He's serving a life sentence and isn't coming home. This isn't some rumor floating around. This is coming straight from someone who's been sitting with this reality for a long time. Reyes makes it clear that this paperwork didn't come from social media or internet personalities. He says it came from a credible source, someone official, and that's an important distinction. This isn't clout chasing, and it's not about internet games. According to him, this documentation is legitimate, and that's what makes the situation uncomfortable for Joe. In my opinion, this is only going to get worse if it keeps being ignored. Joe has been loud on the Joe and Jada podcast about being tough, about pressing people, and about situations involving names like Jimmy Henchman, stories nobody has ever heard before. Now, this paperwork is sitting right next to those claims, and the contrast is nasty work.
I was charged with being the leader of the Nasty Boy organization in the Hunts Point section of the Bronx. I was sentenced to 14 life sentences plus 205 years.
I have to ask, how authentic is this paperwork on Fat Joe?
I mean, what did you ask me? Did I sit in prison for 30 years and forge paperwork against someone who I don't know, who doesn't know me, and whose past never crossed? Look, demigod, what people don't know is that statement comes from a proffer. For those who don't know what a proffer is, it is when you give information to the feds. There were literally hundreds of statements made against me. Many of them I didn't see until years later. Some I still haven't seen. You might never find out about these guys unless the paperwork is released on them. So now let me ask you this question. Joe was picked up for a body, like Star said on his podcast. Then how come he never went to prison? Tell me, how am I supposed to authenticate that paperwork? Do you want me to reach out to one of the agents and ask them to verify it? I'm sitting here in prison with 14 life sentences plus 205 years. Why do I have to authenticate anything? There are people who have been living comfortable for 30 years in the streets because I live by a code. Remember that.
But how come no one else came forward with paperwork on Joe?
I can't answer that question. I mean, the older guys like myself who spent years in prison realize that the street culture is nothing more than an illusion and that no one cares. Many went home, is working, and settled down. If it wasn't for Money Mike being persistent, no one would have seen the statement I had. And it isn't because I'm protecting Joe. It's because, like I said, no one cares. I have more important things to focus on, like my freedom. But remember this, demigod, whatever is hidden in darkness always comes to light.
I'm curious how y'all feel about this. Do you think Joe is eventually going to address this paperwork directly on the Joe and Jada podcast, the same way he keeps addressing these stories he's been telling? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let it be known. So the real question is this: do you think he's actually going to address it? And more importantly, do you think he needs to address it? If you're on camera speaking about urban legends, old myths, and street stories like they're facts, then does that come with an obligation to respond when paperwork shows up? That's what makes this whole situation feel like nasty work. Joe talking wild while paperwork is floating around is a bad look, and I'm not going to lie about that. This isn't light talk, and it's not something you just brush past. I want to know how y'all feel about all of this, so make sure you drop your thoughts in the comment section and keep it real. Before you go, do me a favor. Hit the like button, share this video, and if you're new here, subscribe to Dripzine. Make sure you also tap that hype button because those hype points help this channel grow in a major way. Turn on notifications so you never miss when Dripzine goes live or drops new content. Thank you to everyone supporting a small creator and helping the platform grow.